If I'm Google, I would not run a single ad on Gemini Core, the main large language model. I'd run it at a pure loss until every competitor is forced to slap ads everywhere to keep the lights on. Can you imagine if Google is the ad-free experience? Good morning, everybody. This is AI with Kyle. I'm going to be running through the latest AI news and updates of the day. Before I get started, I wanted to shout out the new website, or the website that's in progress, aiwithkyle.com. This is where you can subscribe to the newsletter. You can also, there's lots of challenges, there's lots of courses, tools, a catalog of all my playbooks, of which there are many hundreds, as well as a prompt library. One thing we are reactivating is the free community. We have about 4,000 people, but it's been dormant, so I'm going to be bringing that back. So if you join the newsletter, you'll be invited into the community as well. The purpose of this is to ask me questions that I'll answer. I can do that on the live stream, but it's more focused inside the community. I'm hoping that people can help each other within that community as well, so it's not just me, because there are people who know a lot more about certain things than I do. Make sure you are subscribed to the newsletter at aiwithkyle.com. That will put you into the community as well. It'll get you access to all the free courses, etc., etc. Let's jump into the news. One quick thing, Google Nano Banana Pro, you can now do 2K images directly inside the interface. Previously, you could do 2K and 4K images using the API. So if you were building software, no problem at all. But they've now given us the ability to do 2K inside the GUI itself, inside the application. Make sure you click download on your image instead of copy. So when you download the image, it will give you the full resolution. If you copy, it's lower resolution. This is a public service announcement if you want high resolution images from Nano Banana Pro. They just launched this yesterday, and this is the kind of thing that would definitely fly under the radar that people won't necessarily know about. So make sure you check that out. Nano Banana Pro is still the best image generation software at the moment. Some people were asking me yesterday, will ChatGPT be able to release something that's better? And also, due to their code red, one of the priorities that OpenAI were talking about was releasing a competitive image model. I think it's going to be very difficult for OpenAI to beat Google, because Google has already cataloged and labeled images on the internet. This gives them a massive database. When training an image model, it's really important not just to have a lot of images. That's one thing you want. You also ideally want them to be labeled. And that's what they've been doing with Google Image for the last couple of decades. They have been collecting, labeling, and curating the world's images. Now, when OpenAI want to train an image model, they need to scrape that information off Google Image, whereas Google just own it and they can process it much faster. I don't think OpenAI will catch up with Google in terms of image generation, and that's also why we're seeing such great image gen from Gemini and from Nano Banana Pro in particular, because Google have the data and they have the labeled data, so they're in a good position right now. Let's talk about ChatGPT adverts. So there's some confusion right now. Last week, inside of the Android app, somebody found some code which suggested adverts are being rolled out into ChatGPT. Users were upset, saying as long as it doesn't get into my Pro account, as long as it doesn't get into my Plus account, maybe that's okay. But if I'm paying for ChatGPT, I do not want to see adverts. There's a guy called Benjamin de Cracker, pretty big on Twitter. He used to work at XAI. I don't know where he's working now. It says currently undisclosed, but he found an advert inside his ChatGPT, and he's well known enough that OpenAI responded to him. Normally, if I saw an image like this, I'd be like, did you just doctor the image? I don't think Benjamin would. He's got too much reputation. OpenAI responded to him. So this makes it very interesting. So he said, I'm in ChatGPT. He has a paid Plus subscription, so he pays $20 a month. Asking about Windows BitLocker. BitLocker is like a built-in kind of security service within Windows. So he's asking about that in ChatGPT, and then he gets shown an advert for Target. So he is asking about something totally unrelated to shopping, retail, going to a shop, going to a physical shop. He's asking about a digital piece of software. And at the bottom of this chat, he gets this advert: shop for home and groceries, connect Target. It looks like an advert, but OpenAI, because Benjamin is well known, jumped in. They're like, oh, actually, no. So here, Daniel Macaulay, who is data, OpenAI, and another guy called Mark Chen. Oh, the Mark Chen, Chief Research Officer, hopped in to say this is something else. McDaniel said, hey, Benjamin, this is not an ad. We've launched apps for some of our pilot partners since Dev Day. This happened a few weeks ago, including Target, and I've been working to make the discovery mechanism for apps more organic inside ChatGPT. Our goal is that apps augment the UX, user experience, where relevant to a conversation, and we're still working on it. Anyone can build apps using the SDK, and we plan to open submissions to the app directory soon. So this was, I want to say, about a month ago, the ability to build an application. So there's companies like Booking.com, Target, I think Peloton, and a few others who now have apps that synchronize or they work within ChatGPT. So you can actually talk to ChatGPT and have it work with Booking.com or have it work with Peloton.com. I'm not sure what you would do there. So that appears to be what is popping up here. That would make sense because other people have screenshots of this happening with Peloton. So it seems like it's very targeted. It seems like it's this small group. Sorry, my light's just gone off. That's annoying. Okay, we're doing it in the dark. It seems like it's this small group of companies that they've actually got this app SDK with. However, if the company is being shoved into a conversation, it looks like an ad, it smells like an ad. To me, that is an advert. Yeah, sure, it's with your partners that do the app SDK with. It's still an ad, Benjamin says. Daniel, when brands inject themselves into an unrelated chat and encourage the user to go shopping, that's an ad. And I agree here. The more you pretend this isn't an ad because you guys give it a different name, the less users like or trust you. I think he's gotten dead to rights here. So this apparently is not their ads feature, but it does look a lot like an advert. What we have heard, and this is relatively speculative, that as of Monday, OpenAI announced a code red situation, focusing on the main model, and they're releasing something called Garlic next week. OpenAI ChatGPT Garlic. We're not quite sure what that is, but we have some ideas. In the meantime, they've been told to stop work on adverts, to stop work on the health assistant, on Pulse, which is the news assistant, which gives you a daily roundup. They've basically been told, stop work on all of these things. We're going to be focusing on our model. So I think what is probably happening, and there's no reason to distrust OpenAI here, ads are being paused. They're not running ads out. This is the app SDK, but it looks like an ad, and it's going to piss off people and it's going to lose some customers. They're in a strange position where they need to make money. If they release adverts into their ecosystem, they are going to get absolutely hammered. People are going to leave. But unfortunately, that is their way to profitability. I just wanted to pull up this from Signal. It says on ads, if I'm Google, I would not run a single ad on Gemini Core, the main large language model. I'd run it at a pure loss until every competitor is forced to slap ads everywhere to keep the lights on. Can you imagine if Google is the ad-free experience? This is something I talked about yesterday when I compared it to Amazon. What Google could do, and it would be smart and tricky, not run adverts for the next 5 years. They just eat into their cash reserves. They use their search ads, making money in the meantime, and wait for other companies to bleed dry. So you take a loss, don't take the revenue from putting ads into Gemini, losing a lot of money, but you take that because you have the cash and you have the patience, and you let people like ChatGPT, OpenAI, insert ads. Users will be annoyed with that and move over to Gemini, and it allows Gemini to pull away the user base from the competitors. The competitors do not have the cash to survive that. So in the same way that Amazon did this with retail, Amazon worked at a loss for about 10 years. They choked out every single retail experience. First booksellers, then the whole of high street and retail. After 10 years, they're like, okay, we've sufficiently crushed our competition. We have destroyed retail as it has existed for 1,000 years. Now we're going to switch on our profit making and take profits. Google could do that. Whether or not they are sneaky enough to do this, we'll see. Forsake taking revenue from ads inside of Gemini for that long, we'll see. But they have a luxurious, envious position. They could take it all because of this. So he goes on to say, Signal has the luxury of monetizing from ads on search. So you could put ads into your AI overviews. You can put ads into search itself, but you don't need to put them into the core experience of using Gemini in the app. AI overviews already give them a monetization vector. Nobody else has that. Everybody else is subsidizing with nothing but vibes and runway. That's why Sam Altman has to go back to investors every month and say, hey, we need another $300 billion, please, because we need to buy more GPUs. Google don't have to do that. It's really powerful. Just by shipping consistently and leaning on the distribution they own, 70% of search traffic, 80% of the browser market, Google has backed itself into the most advantaged incumbent position in the AI market. It's almost unfair, like a predator that survives the harshest winter known to man because it has way more fat stored than the rest. They have cache, the whole stack. They make their own TPUs, so they don't rely on NVIDIA. They have their own cloud services, so they don't rely on Oracle or AWS. They have user base. They have the application layer through Chrome, Android, Workspace. They're in a really good position, and it's theirs to lose at this point. I understand now why OpenAI is in panic mode. OpenAI is running on, where is it here? They're running on nothing but vibes and runway, whereas Google are sitting pretty. They're in a very strong position. I'm going to hop over to some questions. What do you think about Tristan Harris ideas? Do you know his work? Tristan Harris. The name rings a bell. Why do I know that name? Sorry, the Wikipedia. I have donated Wikipedia. I recognize him and I've seen his stuff. I have not read. Has he written a book starring in the social dilemma? I have not seen this. I should watch this. But everyone should watch The Thinking Game, which is a movie about DeepMind. It's fantastic. I recognize him and I'm sure I've seen him talking, probably on social media, which he might be angry about based on the social dilemma, but I don't know enough about his views or background to comment fully. Let me look into him. I'm assuming he's on the AI skeptic side. There are a few people I follow on that side because it's important to get a balanced view, and I'm totally blanking on their names. This is the problem when you follow people on social media and you mainly know them from their pictures. Someone like Ed Zitron, he writes, "Where's your Ed at?" Edward Benjamin Zitron is an English author, podcaster, and PR specialist, and he's critical of the tech sector and artificial intelligence. So he's well worth paying attention to. There's also the guy who's Fair Training AI, Ed Newton Rex. He spoke in Parliament in the UK the other day. He's worth paying attention to as well. These are people that I don't necessarily agree with. They're certainly not on everything, but it's very important that they are doing this work. I think also Pause AI are fascinating. I always find it that Pause AI were behind or helped with things like the hunger strikes. No, it was at Google, excuse me. What I always find interesting about Pause AI is how unpopular they are. It sounds terrible, but don't have much public support. I do not agree, but I think it's important that people are raising issues about artificial intelligence. There are some very serious issues we need to discuss, and we need people like this to raise the alarm. I am not really an AI skeptic, but I am cognizant of the problems we need to deal with in AI. I don't know Tristan Harris enough, I'm sorry. Tough move, but they'll rule the next era. Yeah, if Google can do it, then they're going to do extremely well. The other big problem with Google is they need to cannibalize their own business. About 70% of their money comes from adverts, from search. So people going onto a search engine. As generative AI, using ChatGPT, etc., becomes more the norm, people will go there for information rather than to Google itself, especially as we add search engine capacity inside generative AI. There's less and less need to go to Google. So when that happens, Google's ad revenue from their search surface will decrease. And right now that's 70% of their money. They made 350 billion last year in revenue. 70% of that was from search. So that is what's at risk for them. And they need to pivot that to AI revenue, generative AI adverts. If they move too quickly to ads, people will go to ChatGPT. So I think Google are probably waiting for ChatGPT to start to put adverts in, which looks like it's happening very soon, so that ChatGPT loses public favor. People move over to Gemini, which we're already seeing. That's already happening. And then Gemini can, over time, start to introduce ads. But they have the cash to be able to survive for a few years, many years, whereas OpenAI do not. OpenAI have to constantly raise money because they are just not making enough money. They're not making a profit. Whether they will ever be able to make a profit is debatable because of the huge amount of money that they're raising. Wikipedia is seeking more licensing agreements from major AI firms. All AI companies scrape from Wikipedia. The internet is the training data for large language models, and Wikipedia provides high quality human curated data. It's an incredibly important resource. Also, Jimmy Wales and the Wikimedia Foundation were talking about the fact that traffic is dropping on Wikipedia because people aren't going to Wikipedia because the information can be got through artificial intelligence. And because of all the AIs have trained on Wikipedia, they were complaining this isn't very fair. But this makes a lot of sense. If the AI companies just pay Wikipedia, then they can maintain a high quality data source. I wish OpenAI or someone would just say, what you're doing is so important to our AI mission that we're going to give you X amount of million per year just to continue what you're doing, so that Wikipedia doesn't have to beg for donations like we just saw on that page. If a big company just came in and said, we're going to give you a couple of $100 million a year, Wikipedia wouldn't have to ask individuals for pocket change. It would be easier and beneficial for all AI companies. The problem is it's a public good and nobody wants to necessarily pay for it because everyone else extracts value from it. So if the AI companies could get together and sort that out, that would be wonderful. Or we wait for some philanthropic to do it, one of the good guys. I got an ad on ChatGPT many months ago from Amazon on books on Peter Thiel. That's very funny because I was doing research. That's hilarious. It was a Peter Thiel thing. So they've been testing things and playing around, and they're always doing this. And this is why it's all often confusing, because we'll see a tweet with somebody like Benjamin receiving this, and lots of people in the comments are saying, I don't see it. That's because they do tests, and little test markets in certain countries. Australia seems to get a lot of the early tests, and then things will be rolled out internationally after that. And even if you're in that country, does not mean that you'll necessarily get the test, because it would be a small sample from that particular population, which causes confusion. Some people see something, take a screenshot and say, hey, what the hell's going on? Everyone else would be like, what are you talking about? I don't see this. Which is probably good for OpenAI because they can ignore the screenshots most of the time. In this case with Benjamin, because he's big enough and well known enough, people listen to him, they had to respond. And the fact that Mark Chen, the chief research officer at OpenAI, replied, dang, sorry, Benjamin, we'll look into this. That shows you what kind of clout Benjamin has here. Nate says, what's up with Garlic? Garlic is the response to Gemini 3. On Monday, OpenAI announced a code red, and the document was promptly leaked. It was an internal memo saying, hey, we need to focus on our core competencies, focus on the model. I agree with this. OpenAI does too many side quests. Video, image, voice chat, medical assistance, apps, SDK. People are annoyed with the core model. And people are annoyed for a variety of different reasons. People who liked 4.0 think that 5 and 5.1 have no personality and they're dry and they're unpleasant to talk to. Others have problems with its coding capability not being as good as Claude. So everyone has issues for different reasons. Garlic, that's the code name of the model they are potentially releasing next week, the 4th of December, sometime next week. I don't know whether it would be ready. Presumably it's something they've been working on for a long time, and they're going to push out next week a fine-tuned model. So they haven't done very many fine-tuned models. So this would be interesting to see whether it competes. Immediately they sent out people like Mark Chen to talk about how this is going to be a Gemini 3 beta. On Tuesday, we were seeing that narrative. They're putting a lot on this. Generally, we don't see the narrative of, oh, we're going to beat this particular model. Generally, when a new model comes out, it would just be the best, the state of the art. This is the first time they're actually saying this is a Gemini 3 beta. So it's a specific counteraction to Google and to Gemini 3. It's a high-risk move. Presumably, they're confident on what they have, the fine-tuned model. That is very good. I imagine it will be called 5.2. So ChatGPT 5.2 or GPT 5.2. They might be a bit more daring and make it 5.5, which is a larger jump. That's saying this is a much more of a significant move. I doubt it would be GPT-6. I think that would be jumping the gun. We'll see. I don't think it's anything wildly different to what we've seen before, but it's a thinking model that has been fine-tuned. Whether or not that's enough to beat Gemini 3, we don't know. And what does that even mean anymore? Everybody beats everybody in the benchmarks, but when people actually start to use it in their workflows, when they start to use it in daily life, that's when we realize whether the model is good or not and whether it works for us. The benchmarks are increasingly meaningless because everyone hits the top benchmark with every single release, because otherwise you don't release. And they have this, especially Meta, have this nasty habit of releasing multiple models, seeing which does the best, and then saying, oh yeah, that's the one that we're releasing. You can't trust the benchmarks that much. But we'll see what happens next week. Always willing to be surprised. Everything is always improving all of the time. I think that is the main kind of takeaway here. So Google come out with something amazing. A week later, Anthropic, yeah, that's cool. Here's Opus 4.5, amazing. And then a week or two later, ChatGPT will be like, okay, great. That's cute, but here is GPT 5.5, and then on it goes with them competing with each other. We don't know how long that will last. We don't know if there's a plateau, but for now, this is the narrative. And most AI content creators or people in the AI space will follow the narrative, RIP, I'm cancelling my Gemini, it's time to go back to ChatGPT. Then in a month or so, we'll have something better. It's better to take the longer view on this. Everything is pretty good and getting better. So let's enjoy it. Are they calling Gemini a vampire? Yes. I remember the Star Wars meme, ChatGPT, it was the Death Star one. Before this was it. So this was before the release of GPT-5. Sam Altman put out this image, which was the Death Star. It's such a bizarre image because presumably Sam was seeing himself as the rebellion on his way to destroy the Death Star. Or was he saying we are the Empire and we have a planet-busting weapon? It wasn't clear which side he saw himself on. I assume he's not aligning with the Empire. That would be a wild move. The speculation was the Empire's Google, and here comes OpenAI, the scrappy rebellion, to come and demolish it. Unfortunately, GPT-5 wasn't particularly impressive, and everybody hated it. So much so that they had to loop back and reintroduce 4.0 as a legacy model and all of that kind of mess. But it's a strange narrative to see yourself as the rebellion. So Google Gemini is the vampire, it's the big bad monster, and ChatGPT is garlic. It is going to fight the monster. Or in this case, garlic is used for protection mainly, so it's more of a defensive rather than offensive against Google. Weird narratives. I'm sure he regrets the Death Star image because it got laughed at and nobody understood what he meant. I heard the focus now is with pre-training to produce a significant update. Yeah, so they're doing fine-tuning it. So it's going to have a lot more training, and that should be enough to bump it over the top of Gemini. But in terms of what they're doing, it's not new. To be fair though, Gemini 3, when it came out, they said, oh yeah, we didn't do anything special with the architecture. It's just more pre-training and more post-training, and we just did more. And we didn't hit a plateau, we didn't hit a diminishing returns or any kind of barriers. So it looks like ChatGPT are basically doing the same thing. Just take it back, give it more pre-training, more post-training, and come out with a better model. Won't ChatGPT make a load from this Erotica idea? I'm not sure. It's a weird one. I've done videos on this before about age gating and the fact that they're going to allow more mature content. And I have a lot of people in my comments saying, oh, you can already do it. You can already make erotica. And they like to tell me I'm wrong. You can get ChatGPT to be nasty. So I think the people who are into that kind of stuff already, they worked it out a while ago. So I don't think they're necessarily going to come flooding to ChatGPT to get their erotic needs satiated. I think they're already managing with that. Also, there are models much more uncensored, like Grok. Grok, you can do pretty much what you want, but that's not enough to make it a market leader. That doesn't sell subscriptions. The Erotica idea and allowing mature content is a reaction to the safeguarding issues, a reaction to Gavin Newsom's bills in California about protecting children. OpenAI are saying, okay, we're going to do that. We're going to require age verification if you're under a certain age. That covers their asses from litigation. So yes, we want to protect people, but it's also a legal move to make sure they can't be sued into oblivion. Some of it felt spiteful because he announced Erotica the day after the Gavin Newsom bills requiring the protection of children from artificial intelligence. And Sam Altman, like the day after, fine, we're going to protect the children, but once you are age verified, we're going to let you get nasty, which felt like a bit of a, this is your fault, Gavin Newsom. The timing was too specific. We'll see. A lot is a reaction to people who like 4.0 and want a more, not agreeable, but a more personable model, a model that has more freedoms in it, a model that does allow for attachment, partnerships, and potentially erotica. A small but vocal group adding this could quiet that dissent. It's a strange move. We'll see how not safe for work they get. And it's always going to be this balance between how much do we trust people, like to have an unfettered model, and how do we balance that with potential harm that can come from having a model that is unfettered. And if you're someone like Grok, XAI don't care. They're just like, yeah, do what you want, get nasty. And they are not worried about the implications. If you are OpenAI and you have 800 million users, you're so large that within that population, you are going to have people who get attached, people who fall in love, get married to ChatGPT, like we saw in Japan about a month ago, people who use it for suicidal ideation, and then go down and potentially end their life by suicide as well, because you have such a large group of people, 10% of the world's population. They need to be a bit more careful, because otherwise they will get sued to oblivion by, or at least caught up in court. Composer One has been the biggest game changer for development for me. Composer's great. We have someone in chat, Ben, who works for Cursor. For those of you who don't know, Composer is their own model. Up until a month ago, Cursor worked by bringing in other models. So you'd pull in Claude Sonnet, you'd pull in Codex, ChatGPT, whatever it is, and you would use that within the Cursor interface. But then they released recently something called Composer, which is their own large language model specifically tuned for coding, and it's really good. It's also extremely fast. So I primarily use Claude Code, and I'm used to the cadence of giving Claude Code a task and doing something else for 10, 20 minutes. Composer is much faster. I personally still find Claude Code to give me better results. That said, I'm not a coder. I prefer giving it to Claude Code because I know it will be very good. I don't have the skills to tweak it myself. Just if code, having the speed of Composer to quickly iterate and very quickly deploy stuff and then fix things up and then know what's working and what's not, I imagine is extremely powerful. And it's their first iteration of Composer. They came out with something incredibly strong, and it's only going to get better, especially because they have many developers and so many coders using oh my God, Cursor. They're going to be gathering data on how to make that model better. So it's exciting. It's very cool to see a purpose-built model do something very well instead of these general models that do a lot of things pretty well. B says, I like that 5 was less fluffy. Increasingly, the benchmarks of the model, whether it's more intelligent, is going to be less and less valuable because they're all pretty smart. They're all good at a lot of things. And whether or not your model can beat the International Math Olympiad is not that important for the majority of your users. That is engineers fighting engineers at the top of their game. Absolutely fine. But for the majority of users, we don't care that much. So I think what a lot of them are starting to find, and they're starting to realize, and this is why we're seeing more fine-tuning, is that what's more important to the user is not the raw intelligence, but the user experience. With ChatGPT, for example, they've added a lot of personalization options, the ability to give it personalities, the ability to adapt that personality, because that is what most of us are interfacing with. We don't care what it gets in the software engineering benchmark or the International Math Olympiad. We want a model we can talk to easily, that understands what we're trying to say, that gives us good results. For me, I preferred GPT-5 to GPT-4o because I also like directness. I like a model when it calls me out. This is why I like Claude, because I'll be talking to Claude, going through ideas, and it will sometimes just push back and say, I don't think that's the way we should do it. I find that useful because I'm using it mainly for professional stuff, to challenge myself and grow my business. If you are using a model for personal stuff and maybe you want someone to talk to, like having a journal, like having a diary, then you don't necessarily want a model that's like, cut that crap out, get back to work. No, you're wrong. The best model is not raw intelligence. It's about how we feel about the model, which is much harder for the engineers to capture. And I think that's what OpenAI have struggled with for the last 6 months, not even that, last 3 months, since the release of GPT-5, realizing people didn't just want the smartest model. They want a model they can work with and feel good about using, which is a very different engineering problem. What are these AI tools using under the hood? So all of the models now basically have a little agent that can go off and query the internet. For Gemini, it uses Google directly. ChatGPT used to use Bing. I don't know if they still do. They used to use Bing though, because ChatGPT has a connection with Microsoft. Microsoft own 27% of ChatGPT's equity. They funded them early on. ChatGPT is built on Microsoft servers, and then Copilot uses ChatGPT as well, etc., etc. So Microsoft and ChatGPT are very tightly connected. So they use Bing, and basically, very crudely, your ChatGPT or Gemini is writing a search request, sending it to the search engine, reading what is returned, and then pulling it back into the chat. So it's a little agent that goes off and does that. So it's an example of tool use, which we didn't have with 3.5. It couldn't search the internet, which meant that hallucinations were a lot more of a problem. As soon as you give your AI access to the internet, it can actually double check its work. It can pull up sources and do a much better job of giving us accurate information. Early large language models couldn't do that. So hallucinations and error was a massive problem. Have a great day. I want to take your 5-day class. I'm sitting on the website. If you join up, then there's a few things you get. So you get the newsletter, that's one thing, but also you get put in the community where we discuss things. You have access to all the tools and catalog. I will have the 5-day AI readiness course ready today. I'm not interested in being part of your email list. That's fine. Maybe that is why therapy didn't work. I need a developer this whole time. When are you launching the workshop kit again? January. So we'll, in the new year, we'll launch over New Year, but the cohort will start the second week of January because we want to give people a bit of time to have their holidays. What do you think of AI UGC ads for SaaS? I'm not a fan. UGC, user generated content, I think should be actual humans. I'm maybe alone in this in the AI world, but if you want ads that are showing people who are using your product and they enjoy your product, then I personally think they should be real people. I think AI UCG is gross, personally, so I don't use them or recommend them because it seems deceptive to me. I think that AI avatars definitely have a role. I think using AI avatars to pretend to be real people who then say, this is a great product, you should buy it, is not a good use of AI avatars. It's ethically bad. Apart from ethics, I think it's a losing game. I think that this is the same with a lot of things like faceless YouTube channels using artificial intelligence, AI trading bots or whatever. When something is like too easy, it's being shown as a way to make infinite money online by doing a faceless YouTube channel or generating AI UCG ads for companies or whatever. What tends to happen is the people who are making money are the people who are selling these tools, basically. And by making these technologies available, it devalues the actual output. The more AI UCG ads out there on the internet, the less valuable they are because people are going to stop believing in UCG ads. People are going to get wise to the fact that this is just AI generated and it will self-sabotage. From a morality point of view, it's gross. From a business point of view, it's a short-term solution. Whereas if you go and get raw UCG from people and it's crappy looking and they're umming and ahhing and they're all over the place, that's going to have a higher value in the future than AI generated. How does Claude search the web? What search engine do they use? That's a really good question. I don't know. Probably Google. It can access direct URLs. What about search? Okay, let's ask Gemini. What search engine does Claude use? Brave search. Is that true? Let's see. So this is from Search Engine Journal. Claude, this is from, let's see, when's this date? Because they do change them. This is March 2025, so this is probably okay. So this is saying it uses Brave. Thank you, AI Overviews, for making that up. We need to make sure it's not hallucinating. Claude Web Search. Let's see if there's an announcement. How to add Brave Search to Claude Desktop with MCP. TechCrunch. Anthropic appears to be using Brave to power web search for its Claude chatbot. This is from March 2025. So maybe Brave. So Brave Search has been added to the sub-processor list. So as long as that's not an MCP, that's probably it. Okay, Simon Wilson. So we can trust Simon Wilson. This is a great source. Anthropic Trust Center. Brave Search added as a sub-processor. Yesterday I was trying to figure out if Anthropic had rolled out their own search index for Claude's new web search feature or if they were working with a partner. Here's a confirmation that they're using Brave Search. It was found in the sub-processor list. They could have created their own web index. It's just a lot of work. And if you can work with another company who's already indexed the web, whether it's Google, Microsoft, or Brave, that's the way to go. You just pay them. The fact that they're using Brave makes a lot of sense. Anthropic and Brave have similar morality and missions. That's a great question. I did not know the answer. So thank you for asking. I can confirm Claude does not use Google. I assume they don't use Google because they're very much competitors. Same with ChatGPT. That's why they use Bing. But I did not know it was Brave. So thank you for asking. They found that in its confessions, it wasn't always aligned with the answer that it gave to the user, which is a weird study because it suggests like a meta understanding or almost intentions inside the large language model to where it knows something, but it doesn't necessarily think that particular answer to the user is the best or is going to make the user happy, which is a very strange finding. I'm not going to cover it in detail because I don't have much time, but maybe I'll link it in the newsletter. I'm not sure what the implications of it are yet, but it's more interesting delving into what is going on in the thinking process within large language model because we don't really know mathematically. We just know it works. If we add more data, more pre-training and more post-training, it works better. But beyond that, it's a bit of a black box. Is that part of the jagged frontier process? Which one specifically? Do you ever review people's work? What do you mean by that? I'm happy to pull up a page if you have one. Claude Opus 4.5 is available in Claude Code for Pro users now. Previously it was for Max, but now it's available for Pro as of 14 hours ago. I don't know how much usage you'll get. This is always a problem with Opus, is that maybe you do 1 or 2 different requests and then that's your lot. If you are using Claude Code, you can use /model and select the model, and that is now rolled out to Pro as well as to Max. I've been using it in Max and it is phenomenal. However, Sonnet 4.5 still does pretty much everything. Opus 4.5, our frontier coding model, is now available in Claude Code for Pro users. Pro users can select it using /model. Opus 4.5 will consume rate limits faster than Sonnet 4.5. We recommend using Opus for your most complex tasks and using Sonnet for simpler tasks. So I'm still using Sonnet for most things, but I do have Max. I haven't hit the limit with Opus, but I'm worried I will. All the comments are like 1 prompt and you're done for the week. Claude's models are amazing, but their limitations are a problem. If you can't use a model all day, every day to complete all of your tasks, and you find yourself at some point having to switch over to ChatGPT or switch over to Gemini, that is a failing in your main product. And I say this as somebody who absolutely loves Claude and Claude Code, but that is still a massive issue that you are forcing your customers to go and use another model just because you don't have capacity. I understand it costs a lot, but it's still a massive product design issue. Right, I'm going to finish up. If you want updates in a written form, it's all available on the website, so aiwithkyle.com. So this is a daily update, for example, and you can see I pull all the resources are in here. If you want to follow up with the article, it'll be there. I take the paywalls off as well. There you go, DeepSeek 3.2, the full tech report if you want to follow up and read more. Everything's available inside of the newsletter for you, and that comes out every single day. That's totally free, and you can find it at aiwithkyle.com. I'm also reviving the community. So I have a free community. So once you sign up to the newsletter, you get put in the community as well. This has been around for a while and it's actually got thousands of people in it. I just hadn't been very active in it. It's live streaming into the community as well. So you'll be able to ask questions and it's a smaller group than public live streams. Make sure you sign up. Again, it's aiwithkyle.com. Everything's going to be there. There's tools, there's a catalog, courses, prompts, sign up for all of that stuff. And if you are feeling in a mood for signing up for more stuff, my YouTube is the same thing. So AI with Kyle. It's the same as TikTok, same username. Just crossed over 10,000 subscribers. And so the next stage is 100,000, which is going to take the rest of my natural life, unfortunately. But if you would subscribe, that would be helpful. Thank you. See you. And thank you for being with me. Cheers.